Today we're going to discuss the 3 big mistakes that could derail your retirement. My name is Tyler Nowotny and I'm a financial advisor. And because of that, today on this video, we're not going to discuss stocks. We're not going to discuss any individual investments, and I'm not going to attempt to sell you anything. What we are going to discuss are the 3 major mistakes that could completely derail your retirement. So before we get into that, we need to discuss why now is the time to make a shift, to make a change in your portfolio. The first is because of what is going on right now. The Fed is in the process of cutting interest rates. Some of your fixed investments that you may have enjoyed for the past couple years, those are going to be going away. So many times I meet with someone who is in a money market or is in a CD and they're like, oh, I have 5% fixed that I'm just getting paid. But what they don't understand is that as the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates, that rate is going to go down as well. And the shame about all of this is these are people who they don't like taking. They know that they should not be taking an inordinate amount of risk. And so they have their money in money markets or in CDs, things of the sort. But what they do not understand is that when the Federal Reserve continues to cut interest rates, that option now is going to be a paltry sum. If you have, for instance, $1 million and you have $1 million in money markets, that 5%, that's paying you $50,000 a year. That could be nice. All right, now what happens when the Federal Reserve cuts rates and now your money markets are 1%? Well, now that $1 million is now only paying you $10,000 a year. Now, with that $10,000 a year combined with your Social Security check, that's probably not going to be enough for you to live. So now you're in a situation that you didn't prepare for where you're having to then take more risk than you're comfortable with because you didn't prepare and interest rates are low now. That's not a good option, and that's why now is a time to make a shift in your retirement approach. The other is this. Past performance does not equal future returns, and so because of that, we never know what the market is going to do for the next 10 years. Just because the market performed in a certain way for the last 10 years does not mean the next 10 years is going to be the same. For example, Goldman Sachs, among a variety of other banks, have projected that the S&P is going to average 3% gains annually for the next 10 or so years. Now, let me ask you this. If you're taking part in the 4% withdrawal strategy, it's just simple math. If you're only making 3% a year, but you're withdrawing 4% a year, what is going to happen? Your portfolio is going to decline by 1% a year. That doesn't even get into the point of, all right, what happens if the market loses and you're withdrawing 4% a year? Where now all of a sudden those are compounding because your account is down just from the performance, but now you're withdrawing 4%. So now that adds to those losses, and you can have a devastating compound effect. The other reason it's time to make a shift is the importance of protection. It is so important, and many people go into retirement, but it's important to understand that the way you approach the run-up to retirement is not the same as the way you approach once you're in retirement. Accumulation is different than preservation. For example, when you are working, when you're accumulating that retirement account, if the market is down, who pays you while you're working? Your employer, right? So you don't need a pull from that retirement account. Now, when you're in retirement, who pays you? Well, you pay you. So now, if the market is down while you're pulling, it creates a pretty big example. So the biggest way to prevent that is obviously to make a shift and make sure that a good chunk of your money is protected against loss. All right, even if you lose, the money you're relying on for income is not losing. So those are the 3 reasons now to make a shift. But we're going to get into the top mistakes. And that last point leads us into our first mistake. A lot of people do not understand the difference between average return and yield. For example, I always use this in our events as an example. If I have $100 and I lose 20%, how much do I have now? I have $80. Now that I have $80, if I gain 20% on that $80, how much do I have? I don't have $100. I have $96. So That is to say, if I lose 20%, I need to then gain 25% just to get back to even. So basic math, and this is why this is one of the crucial mistakes I see time and time again that derails people's retirement. Basic math, if I lose 20% and then I gain 20%, if you go by average return, they're going to say your return was zero because 20 and 20, negative 20 plus 20. But that's not accurate. Your average return may have been zero, but your yield was negative on that. And so that's why if you just try to look and say, oh, I'm going for an average return of XYZ percent, that's not going to cut it. You need to look at, okay, what over time is my average yield going to be? Because that will give you the true answer. In that scenario we just mentioned, your average return was zero, but your yield was negative. Your yield was telling the true picture of the situation and not the average return. So that's our first mistake. We're going to get on to the other two mistakes, but if you've already seen enough, you made up your mind that you need to make a shift, click the link down below to see if you qualify for a complimentary Zoom consultation. So get on the line with one of our financial advisors. They'll do a consultation with you, they'll meet with you, and they'll give you a retirement plan free of charge, even if you don't come on board. That's assuming you qualify for one of those meetings. Mistake number 2 is the concept of the 4% withdrawal. Now, the problem with this is just a strict, rigid rule, which does not take into account your personal situation. At the beginning of retirement, you may have, if you retire, let's say at 60 years old, you may have, assuming you live until 90, you may have 30 years to go. You have a long time. And what we always say is if you have a long time horizon, you can operate in a certain way where you have time to make back a larger withdrawal. So often we want to look at everybody's situation, but often what you might be able to do is take higher than 4% early on and then less than 4% later on because we have the time for the portfolio to grow. Often what I find is most of my older clients will often tell me that their best decade was their 60s because they were fit, they were able to go out and enjoy life, they were actually able to really enjoy retirement, go on vacation, travel, do whatever they want. And so in their 60s, they may take a little bit more, but later on, they may cut back. Whereas if you were to just stick to that strict 4% retirement rule, you may not be able to enjoy yourself in your 60s or when you're physically able to enjoy yourself. But then later in life, you may have more money than you actually even need. And so we tend to advise against strict, rigid rules like that because general advice is not good advice. Because there's really no such thing as general advice. The only advice you should be getting is advice that is tailored to your specific circumstances and your specific situation. And so we're going to get on to mistake number 3, and it's a big one. Go ahead and click the link down below to talk to one of our fiduciary financial advisors. Now, mistake number 3, it's really the biggest of them all. The biggest mistake is people not getting particular, specific advice to their specific situation and not building a true individual retirement plan. Oftentimes I see it where people, they don't know if the investments really fit their situation. They don't really know if their account is protected the right way. It's just flying by the seat of their pants. They don't have anything really to understand where, okay, this investment is serving this purpose. This account is structured in a certain way to give me the right retirement for the right circumstances, the right income, the right plan to be built individually for each person because everybody is totally different. Someone who retires at age 62 may require a different plan than someone who retires at age 70 because when you retire at age 62, if you want to claim, you're probably going to want to claim Social Security then because unless you have huge pensions or something else, you're likely to not have other income. Guess what? If you claim Social Security at age 62 and you want to work even a little bit, there's a penalty on you working and making above a certain amount of money. Whereas, if someone were to come to me age 67 and say, hey, Tyler, I'm thinking about retirement. What's a plan for me? On that situation, someone who's 67, all of a sudden that working penalty goes away. So they'd have the option to take Social Security now at age 67 and then maybe work for a year or two. Just two examples there, but that's why everybody's situation is different. And if you're just following generic advice, or you're going in your account, you're just picking random investments, you don't even know if they're working towards your retirement plan, it's probably not going to work. So that's mistake number 3. That's why it's so important to sit down with a fiduciary financial advisor. Proper planning is not just about investments. It's about the whole picture. It's about taxes. It's about Social Security planning. It's about fully understanding your entire situation. For example, myself, I am an enrolled agent with the IRS, meaning I can represent my clients in tax court. I am on record with the IRS as a tax preparer. So for us, we don't just focus on the investments. Just like you shouldn't just focus on your investments, we don't just focus on your investments either. We focus on tax planning, we focus on investments, Social Security, and leaving a legacy. Making sure that when you leave everything to your beneficiaries the right way. So, what I'm going to say here today is everyone who watches this video should click the button below to see if they qualify for a complimentary retirement planning meeting. We're not going to hassle you. We're not going to ask you to do something you don't want to do. No matter what, anybody who attends one of those consultations is going to get a complimentary retirement plan. For Tyler Nowotny, Saturn Asset Management, I'll see you down below. We'll see you on one of those Zoom meetings when you click the link. Have a great day.